Okay.
I'm ready.
We're on 6. Okay, so we will reconvene this Board of Commissioners meeting at 10:12 a.m. And we will be moving on to item number 15, which is a 10 a.m. time certain public hearing. Concerning an ordinance amendment number 851-23-000210-PLNG of the Tillamook County Land Use Ordinance for updates to TCLUO section 3.004 template dwellings test standards for forest and SW-20 zones. We have Melissa Yank with us this morning, and I believe that before we hear from her, we need to hear from County Council.
Yes, as required by statute, I got to go through a few little preliminary discussion items. There's a sign-up list that's in the back of the room for people to sign up if they want to provide their names and addresses so that the board can notify them later of the decision. Staff has copies of the applicable criteria. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward those criteria and other criteria in the plan or land use regulations which the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. And failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the board and other interested persons an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to LUBA. The order presentation, staff will summarize the staff report. Commission can ask questions of staff. Applicant's presentation, which in this case will be Melissa. Public comment, rebuttals, further comment from staff. Then the hearing will be closed to all testimony. And the board, as you know, can discuss it amongst yourselves. Or you can continue the hearing to a later time if you wish to do so and take it under advisement. I have to ask if there's nobody out there, but I'll ask it anyways. There could be somebody online, I guess. Is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the Tillamook County Board of Commissioners to hear the matter? If so, please state the challenge at this time. And are there any conflicts of interest or personal biases which any board member thinks he or she ought to declare? Now is the time.
No.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner.
Okay, perfect. Well, wonderful. Let's move on to let Melissa Yank, our senior planner, present her information to us.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Melissa Yank for the record, senior planner for the community development. I'll let Director Absher get the PowerPoint pulled up for all those in attendance. And we'll just roughly summarize the nature of the request today and what you're reviewing before you. So today we're reviewing an ordinance amendment to the forest zone standards in the Tillamook County Land Use Ordinance. Go to the next slide. There's a lag time in here.
Oh, there's the light here. That's okay.
The ordinance amendments are specifically, again, to the forest zone standards contained within the land use ordinance, and specifically we're only amending a subsection relating to template dwellings. I'll go over in a minute what the template dwellings are in relation to the forest zone. This proposed ordinance amendment is due to a 2019 House Bill number 2225. It was passed back in 2019 at the state of Oregon for amendments to ORS 215750. That section of the code for state statutes is the code provisions for the template dwelling procedures in forest zones. This House bill goes into effect in Tillamook County starting November 1st, 2023. That is why these proposed amendments are before the board to review those changes and to codify them at the local level through our local ordinance provisions. These state statutes do carry the weight. They are the standard with which we will have to base our decisions come November 1. But we at the local level do have a codified zone standards for our forest zones in Tillamook County. And we want those to now reflect the state statutes, so at the local level, our constituents can use a local ordinance for review for future development and standards that it will apply to. So again, this will apply to all forest zones within Tillamook County. These standards will also apply to our small farm woodlot SFW 20 zone properties that were in forest use on January 1st, 1993. So those are the two zones that will be affected by the proposed changes. Next slide. So this is just a map, again, demonstrating the Tillamook County. This is the map of the whole vicinity of our county. So this will apply to all areas outside of cities and outside of unincorporated communities. So the forest zone and the SFW 20 zones all take place outside of those areas. You can go to the next slide. You'll see here on the upcoming slide, there will be a color up showing the zoning for our region. The color green is demonstrating the forest zone, and then it's very hard to see, but there's the coloring for the SFW 20 zone as well. You can see that it will cover a majority portion of our county, especially along the easterly portion of the county. I'm going to hold for that.
Sure. We'll pause for a second.
Yeah.
It should be arriving. Typically, these things do come.
Well, I know.
It's up on my computer.
Yeah,
it's just not
It
on the
is.
screen.
It's just not on.
So
on
if
these
you are
screens.
online, you are getting
You're getting the
by the minute presentation. If you are in the room, we're lagging just
We're
a
lagging
wee
just a
bit.
little bit.
Just a wee bit. So we'll all just look over at Commissioner Yamamoto's
There you go.
computer.
There you
He's
go.
got it up
Yeah,
there.
I
We can
see
see
it.
that the majority of the screen is green.
Green.
There are some very tiny purple areas.
Very tiny.
Madam Chair, if I may, just while we're waiting for the map to load, there was a period of several years within the department where we did not make any updates to our local farm and forest zone ordinances. And it was extremely difficult for staff and the public alike because we had to solely rely on state law. And those regulations contained in OARs and ORS's rules and statutes. And so one thing that we have tried to do since 2015 is to stay on top of these changes as they pass through the legislature so that we can keep our code up to date, which is why we are here today as well. We really want to make sure that we're appropriately reflecting what's written in state law.
Perfect, thank you. And just a quick reminder then, so the green is the forest and
Kind of light purplish blue is the SFW 20 zones. They are very hard to pick out in this county-wide map, but they generally abut those forest zones as well.
the, thank you.
Yeah, you might as well move to the next slide.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it comes right up.
Totally that.
I think it was the color that
I
got
think
it,
it was-
right?
yeah,
It was
it
a
was
map, it was
I
a
think so.
graphic, yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't do words.
So I do want to just provide a general background of why these standards matter, why they apply in the forest zone before we break down what the proposed amendments are. In the forest zone, there are 3 opportunities to apply for a residential placement in the forest zone or those SFW 20 zones that it's applicable to. A large tract forest dwelling, an ownership of record dwelling, or a template dwelling. I'm not going to go too much into the other 2 options, but I just want you to acknowledge that there are only 3 afforded opportunities for residential siting, for new residential sightings in these zones. We're going to specifically look to the template dwelling. Darn it, we should. It's fine. The template dwelling process itself, just to understand the nature of how this review is currently performed, so we can go over what the changes will enact. First of all, the template dwelling procedures and the standards are contained within ORS 215-750, which was amended through the House bill in 2019. The purpose and the measurements that are done for the template test is a 160-acre square. It is centered on a piece of property that wants to go through the procedure of a template dwelling. And then within such 160-acre square, there needs to be a certain number of lots or parcels that fall in the square. It could be anywhere from 3 to 11. It is based on the soils type that are contained on the tract. That is the determining factor for how many lots need to fall in the square. And then also what must fall within the square is a certain number of homes, 3 homes that have existed prior to 1993. So those are the general provisions for applying the template dwelling itself. The other, it's fine, maybe it'll pop up if we change to the next slide. The other thing that's kind of important to understand with the template dwelling process is it is a review based on the tract of the property, which is when it's one or more contiguous pieces of property under the same ownership. So it's not just under, say, a lot of record, which sometimes there are some properties that hold multiple parcels or multiple lots of record in them. Say it's a 300-acre piece, but there's multiple lots or parcels within it. The review is done based upon the tract. So everything that is a contiguous piece of property under the same ownership is undergoing consideration for that tract. And that's going to be important here when we bring up some of the amendments. Any questions about that so far? You can't see it. Great. So I want to go over generally what the proposed amendments are that were contained within ORS 215-750 and how they will apply to our local ordinance. So one of the first parts that is being amended is it was previously stated in code that the 160 acre square would be centered on the subject tract. Now that classification has been amended to say it is the mathematical centroid of the tract. What the purpose of this amendment was especially for irregular properties. Where you centered that square was up for interpretation. It afforded the local jurisdictions to kind of play with the center as maybe needed to potentially give a favorable outcome to the request. That now has been amended to reflect that it is the mathematical centroid of the tract, so that that manipulation cannot occur within the language. So that is the first amendment that we saw through House Bill 2225.
Before you go, can I ask a quick question here? So, mathematical centroid. I don't think I've seen that word centroid before. Is that a word that?
It is. It's a mathematical term,
Really?
and it is. It's a beautiful term. And what I would offer too is there actually was some instruction when DLCD provided us the proposed amendments. A lot of local jurisdictions, especially rural jurisdictions, go, okay, well, how do we do that? And there actually are both free GIS services that can allow for us to do that measurement. So they actually have the tools and examples that we can use at the local level to complete that measurement. So it's not something where we're going to have to buy another program. There's free services that we, the county, can utilize, as well as technical assistance from the state to show us how to use those programs in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The next part that was proposed as one of the amendments, currently there was no language with regards to the opportunities for how property line adjustments would affect the number of properties that fell into that 160 acre square. And so what is being amended through the House bill was that any property line adjustments that came, because this will be retroactive, came after January 1st, 2019, cannot be used to justify the number of lots or parcels or a dwelling that falls within the square. So you probably can see the
It's on
graphic,
my mind, yes.
but what I wanted to show was there was an opportunity in the example provided where that 160 acre square, say, was lacking one, they needed 11 lots or parcels that fell into the square. And prior to the property line adjustment, they didn't have that. With a property line adjustment, a neighbor brings their property boundary closer, both changes the center of the property, but then also moves another parcel within that square. So they were able to effectively manipulate the number of properties that were falling within that tract.
Wow.
Questions about that before I move on? Okay. And then the final amendment that was proposed.
There it is.
There it is. Before it moves.
Do you want to explain those?
Yeah, so the top one just shows where there was 160 acres squared and it was lacking the number of parcels that would have met the provision, in this case 11 parcels that would needed to have fallen within the square. And then the property to the west performed a property line adjustment to afford them to fall within said 160 acres square and provided them the opportunity to meet that threshold. This is actually a property in our county that I used as an example,
Wow.
which performed that provision. Okay. On to the next one. The final amendment that we'll be reviewing is previously, as we kind of discussed how tracts were reviewed. A tract is a contiguous property under the same ownership. One of the provisions that now is coming into play is that how the tract was come January 1, 2019 and if there was any dwelling sited on it, that is how the review will be performed when the template dwelling process is established. So, for instance, currently the code, and as it will remain, is if the tract, the one or more contiguous properties under the same ownership, if they maintain a house on the tract, they would not be eligible for a template dwelling. And so what has been afforded persons, and what we have also seen at the local level taken, is people that have multiple lots or parcels will apply for a home. They'll get their template dwelling on one lot. And then they record one of the lots to a different family member or a friend. And now they are no longer contiguous properties under the same ownership, and now affords that area another opportunity to apply for another template dwelling. So it was creating the opportunity for density where it was not intended to be, because these properties were used and honestly likely would remain continue to be used, because we mostly saw that becoming like a family possession opportunity, where the density was being created, where again, we were not expecting it in those forest zones. Any questions with regards to that amendment? Okay, so moving away from the amendments. Apparently I
We
should never
learned
add pictures
something
to my-
about, yeah, we learned something about why slides move slowly, however.
Yeah, apparently I should never do pictures. I will take great note of that.
Graphics are an issue.
So now getting back to the actual land use process for why we have to go through this text amendment process to our local code. I first just wanted to summarize a couple of the comprehensive plan goal elements that I think are applicable to the review today. First is the goal 1. This is the citizens' involvement process that the local jurisdiction has to go through. I think there's a couple things to note regarding the citizens' involvement that happened during this review process. First, there was a Measure 56 notice that was produced by our department. It was mailed to over 4,000 affected properties. It was also published in the Headlight Herald prior to the Planning Commission hearing that happened at the end of August, also notifying them of both this Planning Commission hearing and the Board of County Commissioners hearing. And we also have to work with DLCD to perform what's called a proper notice to ensure that they have adequate time to review any ordinance changes at our local level. There was a large number of attendees at our Planning Commission hearing that appeared intent to provide public testimony. I do like to bring that forward because, as you noted in the memorandum that I provided to you, there has not been any public testimony submitted on this request. It was during our Planning Commission hearing when we discussed that these provisions would be basically live come November 1, 2023, and essentially regardless of what we choose at the local level to update our ordinance provisions or not, we will have to regulate to those provisions starting November 1. And so most people in attendance ended up leaving after we provided that information, so they did not provide testimony. But we did want to mention that there was, a high value of people that did intend to participate, did involve themselves during the hearing process. We also received a large amount of traffic through the office. When it was originally noticed, we had a large amount of people coming in asking questions about the provisions, how it would affect them, and what it would mean for their properties, as well as just the number of phone calls and emails we received about it. But at this point, nobody has submitted formal public testimony on the request. Another goal element that I think is important to bring out is the forest lands element. The forest land element is intending to inventory and create policies intending to conserve our forest lands within our community and within our jurisdiction. I want to point out that these proposed amendments are not intending to reduce those protections that we were attempting to establish, but instead really ensures consistencies with the intent of especially residential development within these resource zones. It is even noted in our comprehensive plan that residential uses in forest lands are considered a non-forest use. Okay. A couple other sections, just so you again acknowledge the sections that we are updating within our land use code is the forest zone section, which will in turn apply to our small farm woodlot section of our land use code as well. Oh no, I didn't even include a picture in the next one. This is great. I'm just gonna summarize the criteria now for you guys, which you have to base your decision on. The first criterion is if the proposal involves an amendment to the comprehensive plan, the amendment must be consistent with the statewide planning goals and relevant Oregon administrative rules. Just to recognize, we are not proposing any amendments to our comprehensive plan today. The second criterion, the proposal must be consistent with the comprehensive plan. As mentioned, we reviewed specifically today Goal 1 and Goal 4. There was a discussion of all of the goal elements contained within the staff report. And again, we're intending to preserve and ensure consistency with our local comprehensive plan with these updates. Criterion C, the board must find the proposal to be in the public interest with regard to community conditions. The proposal either responds to changes in the community or it corrects a mistake or inconsistency in the subject plan or ordinance. Again, the intention of our local interest to amend our code is to again make sure that it's consistent with both state statutes and policies, but also allow our constituents opportunity to review at a local level the standards that will apply to them for their future development, so that they don't only have to go to the state statutes to have a relevant opportunity to review those standards. And then the final criterion, the amendment must conform to section 9.04 or 9.040 Transportation Planning Rule Compliance. I did just want to mention this plan has no intention to conflict with the transportation planning rule, and it doesn't affect any transportation facilities with these proposed changes. In summary, I did just want to also call out, because I know that there was some questions that revolved around this at the Planning Commission, questions about existing template approvals that had been approved by our department at the local level, or any approvals or applications that are received prior to November 1. Any applications received prior to November 1, 2023 will be reviewed under the code that is effective at the time that they apply, should those applications be complete and go through that review process. But I also wanted to mention that the ORS 215-417 provided a provision that these template dwelling approvals at the local level are afforded one extension of time, because these land use approvals generally come with a time limit in which you must establish the use that is approved in it. For instance, template dwelling approvals, once permitted through our land use review process, have 4 years to obtain the building permits to construct the dwelling that was approved in the land use approval. The ORS 215-417 does allow for us to provide one extension of time to those approvals. So even after November 1, 2023, our department would be afforded the opportunity to provide an extension to those applicants with existing template dwelling approvals to allow them an additional time to go through those processes and obtain those permits at the local level. And then finally, I did want to reiterate, the Planning Commission did make recommendations to the board to approve these proposed amendments back at their August 24th hearing. The department also recommends that the board today review these amendments as the minimum requirements for adoption. And then the one other, and it was very confusing to write in the memo, so I apologize. The one recommendation that the Planning Commission did make is in the proposed language, and this is mirroring the state code, is there is a double if statement in one of the subsections. And so whether the board would like to amend that so that there is not a if statement, just with the way that it was written, you are welcome to take that under your consideration. But we just simply allowed our local code to mirror exactly as was adopted in ORS 215-750.
And so the next steps would be, should the board choose to move forward with adoption, we would like to come back in 2 weeks with the board order and the language in the forest zone for a second hearing for you to adopt and take action on that. So you'll have to sign an order anyway. We will make sure that language is then clearly attached as an exhibit to the order.
Okay.
Right.
I'm sure I'm gonna ask a question.
Yes.
So, the if issue, if we decide, three ifs. So if we decide to change that language and just remove one of the ifs, you would still have to come back anyway in 2 weeks. So if we could do that, clean up the language, it's not gonna require additional work, other than taking that one if out. Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Does that conclude your
That's
presentation?
all I've got unless you have any questions regarding.
Okay, well, let's take questions. So the if question. Is the if. Other questions or comments, Commissioner?
I think in the process of your presentation, you anticipated my question, so thank you. Yeah, I wanted to know how these proposed ordinance changes might impact people who are landowners in these situations or have had them gone through a process. And so I think you addressed all of that the changes that happen here will happen for future development.
Yeah, future applications starting November 1. Yep.
Okay. And basically, I'm restating what I think you both have already said, that what this is basically is us cleaning up our ordinances so that it mirrors state statute and policy.
Correct.
Which is interesting. I don't think I knew that before I was a commissioner, and I imagine the public doesn't know that when the state changes something, that doesn't automatically change it at the county level. We are left to play catch up and change our ordinances to mirror the new state standards. So that's what we're doing.
Correct.
Okay.
And if I can follow up, Mary Faith, Sarah mentioned that time when we were lagging behind. And of course, when people want to make a land use application, they go to our land use ordinance. They're not going to go looking through state statutes, trying to figure out, what the state says. And it created some awkward situations when they say, hey, your land use ordinance says you can do this, and you guys say, well, the state
State
law
says you
says
can't.
number two. And another follow-up, working with Sarah and staff historically, sometimes you see an application come before you where you go, come on, this really isn't, a forest issue. This isn't going to have any impact on the forest as a practical matter. So you try to work with the applicant, and in this case, the template test, and maybe try to figure out a way that they can get it done. Unfortunately, by way my read of this, that's becoming a little harder on us to do now. So anyway, that's two follow-ups to what Sarah had to say.
Thank you, Bill. Questions, Commissioner?
No questions of that, thank you.
Nor do I. I think it's a fairly straightforward process just to make sure that our ordinances are in line with the state, which ultimately provides better customer service to the residents of Tillamook County so that they are not caught in that middle ground saying, but I read your ordinance, as Bill said. So I think it's something we need to do. So if I understand correctly, then we would now move into our public hearing and take any testimony that is to be heard. So we will open this public hearing at 10:40 a.m. Public hearing is now open. Do we have any public comments? I see no one in the room. Did we have anyone online?
I see someone in the back of the room.
I did too, but I don't believe she's here for public comment. Okay, and having no one online, having no one in the room. Now, we are going to continue this hearing, is that correct? To 2 weeks from now so that you can bring that back. So do I close it or continue it?
So thank you, Madam Chair. You can either decide to take action and approve the amendment today. We will come back with a board order, and it would just be the board order, or we can set it over and bring everything back as 2 items for discussion and then consideration at 2
Okay.
weeks.
I think we are ready to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed, 10:40 a.m. Okay, so then we have the opportunity to talk about whether or not we're ready to approve this, and I think we need to deal with the if. Within that. So, Commissioner, questions, comments?
We're not obligated to have a second hearing then.
You're not.
Okay. And people have had ample opportunity to give testimony and participate, so I'm prepared to decide.
Okay. Commissioner?
As am I, with some comments.
Okay. Would you like to make some comments?
I would.
Before we move
I
to
would.
motion?
Yes, I would. So, you've heard me rail on Department of Land Conservation development before and land use issues in the state of Oregon. The state of Oregon, I mean, our 19 planning goals, they're terrific. It was a great way to get started. Public processes, but I think honestly, the Department of Land Conservation and Development has gone above what they really should be doing. They should be allowing more local control here. And you've heard me rail about this before. Land use processes in the state of Oregon are all top-down, with no discussion. And that to me, and I'm a little concerned here about forestry issues and encroachment on forestry practices. At the same time, I am a proponent of as much housing as we can get. So I think this just muddies the water to me. It just does. It throws all of these new amendments and new processes on board for the average person owning a small forest woodlot, something like that. They have to hire an attorney to figure out exactly what's possible. And again, I just think that goes above and beyond. But far be it from me to argue with the state of Oregon. They seem to know exactly what they're doing and what they want. But to me, the Department of Land Conservation and Development is a little out of control. My one comment here is not going to change anything at DLCD, but I just want to put that statement out there that this is making things so much more complex. Not only for the department here, but for people that own property in the state of Oregon. So, just wanted to put that out there, and I think we should tackle this if issue also. So with that, I'll shut up.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments based? Okay. And I have no comments. I think this is something that we want to move forward with. So, did you have a motion prepared that addresses the if?
We did not. The motion could just be as amended to remove the if.
To remove the extra if?
To remove the extra if.
Okay.
If I might recommend, I would say the if at the beginning of subsection 8 rather than the if starting at the top of subsection 10, as it's implying the if for all 8 through H. I know, isn't it great? You know, you thought they would get it right if they were going through an amendment process in 2019 at state level, but even those sometimes get missed by them.
So do you feel you have the information you need to make a motion, Commissioner?
No. So I'm going to read 16 in consideration of where do I put the if issue?
Or you could just, or perhaps you could just say as amended.
As amended.
As stated in the record.
Yeah,
Would that
because
hurt
we-
council? Then that way we know, we all know it's well documented and
I was looking forward to a motion with an if in it.
As
Yeah.
amended.
I'll tell you, it was really fun writing that in my memo. I was like, how do I say this effectively?
Double if,
Double it.
if squared.
Mm.
Okay, I think I'm ready. We're ready for a motion.
Yes, we are.
Madam Chair, in consideration of an ordinance amendment number 851-23-000-210-PLNG, as amended as stated during our staff report. Ordinance amendment of the Tillamook County Land Use Ordinance for updates to Tillamook County Land Use Ordinance Section 3.004, updating the template test standards for forest and SW20 zones. Bill, you okay with that?
So far.
I would move approval.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any board concerns today?
I'm exhausted.
Okay, we do have an executive session that we will go into, but I'm going to read the board announcements before we do that. Oh goodness, and I have an entire half a page. Thank you, ladies. Thank
Thank you so much.
The Commissioners will hold a board briefing on Wednesday, October 11th at 2 p.m. to discuss weekly Commissioner updates. The meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149. Conference ID 736-023-979#. The Commissioners will attend a Commissioners Candidate Forum on Thursday, October 12, 2023 at 5 p.m. The meeting will be held at the VRI Building, rooms 105/107, 4506 3rd Street, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149, conference ID 589-644-589#. The Commissioners will attend a winter preparedness meeting on Friday, October 13th at 11 a.m. The meeting will be held at the Tillamook County Emergency Communications Center Conference Room, 2311 3rd Street, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149, conference ID 786-620-752#. The Local Public Safety Coordinating Council, LPSCC or LPSC, teleconference will be held on Monday, October 16th, 2023 at 12 p.m. The meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149, conference ID 155-859-952#. The Commissioners will hold a Commissioners Candidate Interview on Monday, October 16, 2023 at 5 p.m. The meeting will be held at the Tillamook Bay Community College, rooms 214, 215, 4301 3rd Street, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149, conference ID 589-644-589#. The Commissioners will hold an executive session on Tuesday, October 17, 2023 at 11 a.m. pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub I to conduct a performance evaluation. The executive session will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The executive session is not open to the public. With that, we will recess this board meeting at 10:48 a.m. to go into executive session under.
192-6602D.
Perfect, thank you.